Hi everyone, it's Mark Merrill with Firm, the Fact Files. Are the scribes like mainstream media? Like back in Jesus' day? Well, you know who all these culprits are. You ought to by now. So, how were the scribes defined in the days of Jesus? The same or similar to today's mainstream media so-called journalists? Yeah, right. Especially against Donald Trump by assassination attempts in July and September 2024. Sound familiar? Back in Jesus' day. Better. And the so-called violators of the Jewish laws of the day. Yeah, yeah. Violators of the day. We'll tell you about it. Let alone today's mainstream media censors, and mostly, without yours truly here, we are on social media on YouTube and Twitter, but we're pointing out the social media minions, the other ones here, Facebook now known as Meta, with no set income. Yeah, the social media minions. That's the ones who post to these godforsaken places. And YouTube, Google, Facebook, Meta, all look the other way. Instagram, the list goes on. Not to mention TikTok, which we're trying to get rid of on here. But what they do is they make up their own laws. And as you'll find out here in this segment, folks, this program about if the scribes are like the mainstream media of today, let's see if the scribes measure up or if they don't. Maybe they had something to do with Jesus' crucifixion. And the minions, though, getting back to them just momentarily, the social media minions, they make up their own laws and they can get enforced by the Biden-Harris regime and DOJ and the FBI to enforce it. So here, coming up, folks, are some outright facts about the scribes versus mainstream media in 21st century America. Mark Merrill for Firm. So who were these people? Who were the scribes? And they often argued, by the way, folks, with Jesus at the time. Scribes in ancient Israel were learned men whose business was to study the law, transcribe it, and write commentaries on it. They were also hired on occasions when the need for a written document arose or when an interpretation of a legal point was needed. Ezra, a teacher well versed in the law of Moses, was also a scribe, the prophet. Scribes took their job of preserving Scripture very seriously. They would copy and recopy the Bible meticulously, even counting letters and spaces to ensure each copy was correct. Jews became increasingly known as the people of the book because of their faithful study of Scripture, particularly the law and how it should be followed. Then the New Testament era came along, and scribes were often associated with the sect of the Pharisees. Although not all Pharisees were scribes, in the Gospel of Matthew, they were teachers of the people, Gospel of Mark, and interpreters of the law. They were widely respected by the community because of their knowledge, dedication, and outward appearance of law keeping. Here comes the bad stuff, folks. But the scribes went beyond interpretation of Scripture and added many man-made traditions to what God had said. They became professionals at spelling out the letter of the law while ignoring the spirit behind it. This led to many confrontations between Jesus and the Pharisees and the scribes at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus shocked his audience by declaring that the righteousness of the scribes was not enough to get anyone to heaven. Gospel of Matthew. A large portion of Jesus' sermon then dealt with what people had been taught by the scribes and what God actually wanted. Toward the end of Jesus' ministry, he thoroughly condemned the scribes for their hypocrisy. Again, in Gospel of Matthew. They knew the law, and they taught it to others, but they did not obey it. sound pretty familiar today, folks? Especially them. Lies, lies, and more lies. Some things don't change, do they? We move on to another one, though, folks. The one we were just going through about the scribes was from the website, and we will put it on our comment section after the program, gotquestions.org/scribes-jesus. The other one we're going to check into here, folks, is one called where the scribes were masters of the Hebrew law writings through diligent study. Now this one is an excerpt from Church News, or I should say thechurchnews.com. That's T-H-E, thechurchnews.com. Interesting how they would title it that way. The scribes were masters of Hebrew law and writings through diligent study. Yes, indeed they were, as we just explained. But when there were prophets in Israel, scribes served primarily as teachers and copyists. Interesting terminology there. Terminology as teachers and copyists. However, when there was limited access to the prophets, such as some periods of time when the Jews were in exile, scribes, who were expert in the law of Moses, took on important duties and fulfilled powers and roles. When the Jews were in Babylonian exile, scribes worked to help keep the people's faith alive and retain national identity. And while they were in exile, most of the people had begun speaking Aramaic or Chaldean, languages used in Babylonia, and were no longer able to read or speak Hebrew. By the time they returned to Jerusalem, the people, the Israelites, had become quite dependent upon the scribes to interpret the scriptures. And in an effort to present the scriptures so they could be understood by all the people, the scribes read them in the original Hebrew, translated or explained them in whatever local language was spoken by the people. Scribes also, it says here, though, folks, became interpreters of the law as members of the Sanhedrin, which was the highest legal and administrative body that governed Jewish life. You recall, if not, brief little bit of history is that Jesus was brought before the Sanhedrin. Why do you preach to be the Messiah? Are you the Messiah? Check that one out, folks. One more, or a couple of more things, folks. The scribes' services were given freely without payment unless they possessed independent means. Scribes had to earn their living and then teach the law as an avocation. Some scholars speculate that the scribes' unpaid status is reflective of the order that judges not receive gifts, as decreed in Deuteronomy. Thou shalt not wrest judgment, though shall not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. Gee, it's too bad, it's money is the root of all evil, as they write. But you know what? That's not exactly how that goes in the Bible, folks. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Better be careful what you preach, especially when you get paid for it. Now this is interesting for the last segment of our program here on, folks, the scribes, and are they anything like the mainstream media of today? What we have here before you are charts of American voters and how the turnout took place and how it ended up in 2022 in the midterms, right up here, and what could happen in 2024 down below if 18 to 29-year-olds follow the lead teaching of Marxist-believing university educators and administrators over the past 4 to 5 years. That's right. Could. That's a proposal. That's a projection, as we put down there. So this shows how the midterms turned out factually. 2022. Pretty balanced. Actually, it's actually for the Republic of the United States. But they're saying just this one demographic age group between 18 and 29, if they believe everything that they've been taught since 2021, and maybe even a few years before that, God forbid, and they believe in the Marxist ways and supporting Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran, could tilt the election in a bad way, folks. Now, finishing up here, folks, we're showing now a list and pictures of Marxist educators currently in our major universities teaching anti-Semitic and anti-American treason curriculums to this day. I like to be truthful and honest, folks, but, things like this are just a little bit edgy, shall we say. I'd say a bit quite edgy. So we'll start off with number 1 you see at the top. We got 7 of them, folks, but we're going to go through them real quick. Number 1 on the hit list here, or the Marxist list of teachers, Mr. Wonderful here, is an Abdul Malik Ryan, DePaul University. Oops, let's get this right on him. There we go. Racism and xenophobia, he says, are just as American as baseball and apple pie. This one right here, Alan Walker, who is openly transgender, this man right here, stepped down from a position at Old Dominion University after working to normalize the term MAP, minor attracted persons, and has since landed a new job and still working only now at Johns Hopkins University. Yike. Number 3, the white race is the biggest murderer, rapist, pillager, and thief of the modern world, says Nicole Hannah-Jones here. Creator, there we go. She's the creator, folks, of the New York Times 1619 Project and current Knight Chair in Race and Journalism at Howard University. Once an all-black university. And prestigious. Number 4 on the list here is Jen Jackson, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Syracuse University. She says, quote, "The goodness of cops is unimportant. They are employed in an institution meant to eradicate blackness. The philosophical principles of being a police officer are racist and anti-black," she says. Number 5, Stephanie Baran, socialist instructor at Nichols State University, describes herself as a vulgar Marxist. This one, a vulgar Marxist. Because she desires to see the entire dismantling of the system versus the other, softer, kinder, brutal Marxists. Is she kidding me? Sakes. Blech. I don't know, folks. That doesn't sound too good to me. And 2 more, ladies and gentlemen. This one right at the very top here, number 6, is Robin Henderson Espinoza, some days. Other days, she's known as Roberto Che Espinoza, a faculty member at Duke Divinity School. Oy. Offering a course about decolonizing Jesus and his myths and teachings that have been institutionalized. And one last one, folks, here at number 7. We do not have a picture, did not have one available to prepare, but a Columbia professor, Joseph Massad, called the October 7th Hamas massacre of Israel and American citizens awesome. And meanwhile, at Cornell, professor of history Russell Rickford announced his exhilaration over the murder of innocent Israeli civilians. Heard enough? This organization has heard way too many. We can't even get a quote, ladies and gentlemen, upon several tries to get Rachel Isaacs, the rabbi of the synagogue in the city of Waterville, right in central Maine, would not talk to us. So we're allowing our youth folks to be taught destructive ideas and lies that are ruining our country. We're allowing them to be taught to hate America, the West, and its allies. It shows, according to exit polls, 63% of voters 18 to 29, as we've previously mentioned, voted for leftist politicians in the midterms that we showed you, 2022. That means a majority of Gen Z support anti-American left-wing policies such as socialism, Marxism, wide open borders, higher taxes, more handouts, and dangerous soft-on-crime policies. This information comes from PragerU, Dennis Prager and Marissa Street. Education got us into this mess, and they say education is the only thing that will get us out. Very true. Very, very true. And a couple of other things, folks, before we wrap this one up here on FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media, as we started off with are the Scribes. Not all that different from mainstream media of today, the 21st century. Let's see what you think of this one. Texas is still at it there with Greg Abbott. Texas looks to move illegal immigrants from voter registration rolls. Finally, some good news. This source comes from the Epoch Times of October 10th. And last, we'd like to get this one in, folks, on a person that wrote in to Newsmax, actually about a year ago. He says it's the demise of morality. His name is Jerry James from Oklahoma. President John Adams said our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The serious problems plaguing our nation today stem from the demise of morality and Christian faith. Like many like to claim it never was a Christian nation, but untrue, says Mr. James. Although we have always tolerated different faiths, our laws and culture were long reflective of Judeo-Christian values. By taking in waves of illegal immigrants and those who do not understand or hold our values and faith to their hearts, we will not remain as America. Thank you for joining us, folks. And stay tuned to more podcasts here on rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. We're also on Twitter, YouTube, and email us anytime at fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. Prepare to vote, folks, in a few weeks. And it will be a crucial one. And make sure that you are prepared and you have done your research, and that is everything you need to know about both candidates to lead our country the right way. As always, folks, stay informed, pray, especially for Israel. Peace to all.